They were freezing to death, thousands of them, crying for water, calling for their mothers. December 13th, 1862, the night after the battle, a young Confederate soldier stood behind a stone wall, listening to the screams. His name was Richard Kirkland. He was 19 years old, and he couldn't take it anymore. He gathered every canteen he could find, climbed over the wall, and walked straight into enemy fire. Not to kill, to save. But to understand why he did this, we need to go back 3 weeks to a disaster that never should have happened. November 1862. Virginia. On the banks of the Rappahannock River, the largest army ever assembled on American soil is gathering. 120,000 men. The Army of the Potomac. Their commander, General Ambrose Burnside, is a man who never wanted this job. But President Lincoln is desperate. The North needs a victory before Christmas. The public is tired of war. Burnside has a plan. It's actually a good plan. Cross the river quickly. Surprise Robert E. Lee. March to Richmond before the Confederates can react. There's just one problem. He needs pontoon bridges. The Army engineers in Washington promise they'll be there on time. Burnside arrives on November 17th and looks for the bridges. They're not there. He waits 1 day, then 2, then a week. For 10 agonizing days, the entire Union Army sits on the riverbank, waiting for pieces of wood. And while they wait, Robert E. Lee moves his entire army into position. By the time the bridges finally arrive, the element of surprise is gone. Lee has occupied the hills behind the town of Fredericksburg. He's turned those heights into a fortress. Every military textbook says the same thing: do not attack. But Burnside, desperate, terrified of Lincoln's anger, orders the attack anyway. What happens next is not a battle. It's a massacre. December 11th, before the battle even begins, the horror starts. Union engineers try to build the pontoon bridges, but Confederate sharpshooters are hiding inside the town, in cellars, in attics, picking them off one by one. The engineers fall into the icy water. The river turns red. Burnside, in a rage, orders his artillery to level the entire town. 150 cannons open fire. For hours, tons of iron rain down on Fredericksburg. The historic homes, the churches, the schools, all reduced to rubble. Civilians hide in basements, listening to their world collapse. When Union troops finally cross into the city, discipline breaks down. Frustrated by the cold, by the delay, by the death, the soldiers begin to loot. They smash pianos. They drag paintings into the muddy streets. Some men put on women's dresses and dance in the wreckage. It's chaos, a release of tension before the storm. But the looting is just a distraction. The real enemy is waiting just outside town, at a place that will become synonymous with slaughter. Mary's Heights, December 13th. Dawn. The fog lifts and reveals a nightmare. Between the town and the Confederate positions lies a wide open plain. No cover, no trees, nothing. And at the base of Mary's Heights, there's a sunken road, protected by a 4-foot stone wall. Behind that wall, 4 rows of Confederate infantry are waiting, shoulder to shoulder behind them, on the hill. Artillery. General Longstreet, Lee's second in command, looks at the field and tells Lee, "General, a chicken could not live on that field when we open on it." He's not exaggerating. Burnside sends them in anyway. Brigade after brigade after brigade. Blue uniforms marching across open ground into a wall of fire. The Irish Brigade, men from New York and Boston. tuck sprigs of green boxwood into their caps because they have no shamrocks. They charge, singing. They're cut down like wheat. 545 men, killed or wounded in less than 20 minutes. They charge again and again. Witnesses say the soldiers' heads explode like melons under the cannon fire. Men are blown to pieces before they can even raise their rifles. 14 separate charges, 14 failures. Not a single Union soldier reaches the stone wall. Not one. By nightfall, 12,000 Union soldiers are dead, wounded, or missing. Lee's losses? Less than 5,000. But the numbers don't tell the real story. Night falls. The guns go silent. But the screaming doesn't stop. From the frozen plain comes a sound that haunts the survivors for the rest of their lives. Thousands of wounded men begging for water, calling for help, crying for their mothers. The temperature drops below freezing. Wounded men freeze to death where they fell. Their blood creates a red carpet of ice, and then something impossible happens. In the night sky above the battlefield, great curtains of light begin to shimmer. Red, green, violet. The northern lights. The aurora borealis. In Virginia. It's extremely rare this far south, but there it is, dancing above the dead. The Confederates see it as a sign of God's favor. The Union soldiers see it differently. They see the heavens bleeding. Behind the stone wall, a young sergeant named Richard Kirkland can't sleep. He's 19 years old. He's from South Carolina, and he can't stand the screaming anymore. Kirkland goes to his commanding officer. He asks permission to go over the wall. The officer stares at him. "You'll be shot. You understand that?" Kirkland nods. "I know, sir, but I have to try." The officer, after a long pause, agrees, but on one condition: no white flag. If Kirkland is going to do this, he does it with nothing but his courage. Kirkland gathers every canteen he can find. He fills them with water. He takes a deep breath, and he climbs over the stone wall. Union sharpshooters see him immediately. They raise their rifles, but then they see what he's carrying. Water. They lower their weapons. For the next hour, in the middle of no man's land, Richard Kirkland moves from wounded enemy to wounded enemy. He gives them water. He covers them with coats. He holds their hands. Both armies, Confederate and Union, stop. They watch in complete silence. For 1 hour, on that frozen field, the war pauses. Humanity returns to hell. When Kirkland finally climbs back over the wall, exhausted, covered in blood that isn't his, both sides remain silent. No one fires a shot. They called him the Angel of Mary's Heights. The next morning, Burnside wants to lead one final charge himself. He wants to die with his men. His generals physically stop him. The Army of the Potomac retreats across the river. 12,000 casualties for nothing. When the news reaches Washington, President Lincoln collapses into a chair. He says, "If there is a place worse than hell, I am in it." Fredericksburg was more than a battle. It was a testament to the cost of incompetence. It showed that bravery is not enough, that courage cannot overcome stupidity. The stone wall at Mary's Heights still stands today. You can visit it, you can touch it. A silent monument to the thousands who marched into fire because they were ordered to. But there's something else there too. A statue In 1965, a statue was erected at Fredericksburg National Battlefield. It shows Richard Kirkland kneeling beside a wounded Union soldier, giving him water. The inscription reads, "At the risk of his life, this American soldier of sublime compassion brought water to his wounded foes." Richard Kirkland was killed 9 months later at the Battle of Chickamauga. He was 20 years old, but for 1 hour, on a frozen December night, he reminded the world of something we forget too easily, that even in hell, we can choose to be human. This is Forgotten Headlines. If stories like this matter to you, help us keep them alive. This is Forgotten Headlines. Subscribe for more stories from the archives.